Today we are going to learn about the shape of a data distribution. Here we have a couple of vocabulary terms. So we're going to actually match them with their appropriate definition. A cluster is, think about what a cluster is, something grouped together. So a cluster is going to be data that are grouped closely together. So if we have a cluster of dots on a dot plot, that would be, we would show that in a sentence. A gap, if I have gap something, nothing fills that space. So gap is the numbers that have no data value. A peak, think about a mountain at its peak, it's the top. Peak is the most frequently occurring values, which is also going to be our mode. So here it's straight across the most frequently occurring values, or the mode, and then our symmetry. Symmetry means on one side it's the same as it is on the other. It looks the same. So symmetry is this top definition that says the left side of the distribution looks like the right side. We're going to use these key terms to describe a data when looking at a specific graph. So here we have a dot plot, and we're going to use the dot plot to answer the following questions. So the interval blank has a cluster of several data values. We look at the dot plot and see where is there a cluster, where are there a lot of values grouped kind of next to each other. And it is the interval. If we look right here, there's a cluster of data. So interval 10 to 12 has a cluster of several different values. Then we want to look for our gaps. Our gap where there's no values, and that's at interval 9 and 13. They have no data values. Then our next thing says the value 10 is a blank because it is most frequently occurring value. So most is mode. And the definition that we grouped with mode is our peak. So the value of 10 is a peak because it is the most frequently occurring value, which is also known as the mode. So when we're describing our shape of distribution, we're going to use the term peak. So here we have where it says describe the shape of distribution. The dot plot shows the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit in a city over several days. Okay, so here we're looking at temperature. You can use clusters, gaps, peaks, outliers, and symmetry to describe the shape. So here I've done a fill in the blank, but whenever you start practicing in class, we're going to have you form your own sentences. So for now, the shape of distribution is blank because the left side does not look like the right side of the data value. So we look at our definitions, which describes them looking the same on both sides. And that's symmetry. If it does not look like it, then we said it is not symmetrical because one side does not look like the other. And then we could say there is a blank from blank. So on this one, we're going to talk about a gap. There is a gap from, and let's look up here. Where is our gap? Our gap lies in these numbers, meaning that there are no numbers, no value from 19 to 21. And then let's say there are clusters. Remember, clusters is where there is a bunch of data that's kind of next to each other. And our clusters, if we look over here, we see some clusters here that are grouped together, so from 16 to 18. And over here also we have a lot of data value on this side of the dot plot. So our clusters would also be from 22 to 25. Our next vocabulary word is distribution. That's what we're describing, our distribution over our dot plot. Distribution has a peak. So remember, peak is the mode where it's most, the highest at, the most value. And our peak here is at 22. And there are no outliers. So if we're not sure, then we're going to go through our IQR in that process of finding our outliers. We can also describe the shape of distribution with our box plot. Okay, so we have our box plot for the number of visitors to a gift shop. Okay, and this is in 1 month. Each box and whisker has the same length. So if they have the same length, one side looks the same on the other, our value is all there, then that means it's our vocabulary of symmetrical. We're also going to say the data is evenly distributed. So you can provide either one of those sentences. Remember, these are practicing sentences for you to form your own. And then we have the distribution is blank since the left side of the data looks like the right side. Well, we just said it. It's symmetrical. And then we look and we say, are there any outliers? Remember, our outliers on a box plot are represented with a star. And here, we don't have any stars, so there are no outliers. So let's go to our next thing. We can describe the center and spread. We use the following flow chart to decide which measures of center and spread are most appropriate to describe a data distribution. So we ask ourselves, is the distribution symmetric? If yes, you are going to use the mean to describe the center and use the inner quartile range to describe the spread. If your answer is no, it's not symmetric, we're going to use the median to describe the center and inner quartile range to describe the spread. So no matter if it's symmetrical or not, we're going to always use inner quartile range, but symmetry is going to tell us whether to use mean or median. So let's practice this. The dot plot shows the number of states visited by students in a class. Okay, we're going to choose the appropriate measures to describe the center and spread of the distribution. Justify your response based on the shape of the dash distribution. So we look at our dot plot. Is it symmetrical? Does it look the same on one side as it does the other? No. So the data is not symmetric. And there is an outlier at 19. So this is where we decide what we're going to use to describe the center. Is it symmetrical? No. So remember, we use this flow chart. No, that means we are going to use the median and the IQR, interquartile range, for appropriate measures to use to describe the center and spread. So now that we know what we're going to use, we write a few sentences describing the center and spread of the distribution using the appropriate measures. So here I formulated sentences again. This is an example of what you're going to have to come up with on your own in class tomorrow. So the median is, and I would like you to press pause and find the median for us. When you have found your median and your IQR, so you need to find your median, your Q1, your Q3, and your IQR. Once you have found all of those, please press play, and we will continue with our sentences. Okay, the median is 12 states. The first quartile is 11, and the third quartile is 13. The interquartile range, making your Q3 minus your Q1, is 2 states. Therefore, the data are centered around 12 states, our median, and the spread of data are centered around the center is about 2 states, which is our interquartile range. So you find those two, and then you just give me a sentence stating what they are, and then additional sentences saying that they are centered around whatever the median is, and they are centered around whatever your spread is. And that is how we describe our shape of distribution.